Number 3 in the back, the cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class, and I think we're getting hijacked.
Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City.
What the hell was that? Oh my God! Oh my God!
I think everybody's life changed on 9/11. And I was at a class with my daughter doing kinder music, beating on bongos and drums. And somebody walked into the class and said, an airplane just hit one of the Trade Center buildings. And a couple of minutes later, they walked in and said, a second airplane just hit a building. And I grabbed my daughter, Megan, and I walked out, and I knew that I was getting ready to go. I knew that I was going into combat. I was going to Afghanistan. So we went home, and just like everybody, we stared at the TV. My phone was ringing.
The unthinkable happened today. The World Trade Center, both towers, gone, and we are all witnesses to it, and to some degrees we are all victims.
And they said, hey, pack your bags, we're leaving tomorrow. And so we prepared to leave tomorrow. They dropped me off at the squadron. I told them goodbye. And then I called him and said, come pick us up. Well, this happened 2 days in a row. And then my wife said, hey, on the third day, she said, hey, if you don't come home, if you guys don't leave today, then don't come home. Go stay in, the BOQ, the officers' quarters hotel. And she goes, because this is killing us. And we ended up leaving. Now, what people don't know is that we were originally supposed to go up to New York City, and we were supposed to fly bodies out of the Trade Center, the towers, but they weren't finding any bodies, so we steamed straight across the ocean and started going towards Afghanistan. We did a rehearsal exercise in Egypt. I was pulled off the ship, and I went, and I actually didn't realize how big of a deal it was at the time, but I went with two other Marines, and I was locked in a room with General Mattis.
Where was Osama bin Laden when you were at Rhino?
Osama bin Laden was still in Afghanistan.
Bin Laden was 400 miles away in the Tora Bora Mountains, and Mattis had the helicopters to get there.
General Mad Dog Mattis and I helped plan the insertion and the airfield seizure into Afghanistan for Marines that happened in November 2001.
We would basically block the escape routes, and then we would move up the 2 valleys. We were very confident that we had a good fix on him. And as we pushed up those valleys, he would have to move, and at that point we'd kill him.
We operated out of Kandahar for a number of months, and I led a lot of the initial missions out of Afghanistan in 2001 with a lot of people, not just Marines. That was a big impact in my life. It was something that I'm extremely proud of, that I was on the front lines for our country, that I led a lot of the initial missions, a lot of successful missions, and made a big difference in what was going on at the time for our country. Being a pilot has really shaped who I am today. It really affects my thought processes on how we learn. Not only did I fly the 46 in combat and Operation Allied Force and Operation Enduring Freedom, but I also was a flight school instructor. I was a V-22 Osprey pilot. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I continued to work in the V-22 Osprey program, where I ran a training program called the Marine Aviation Training Transformation Program. I then became an air medical pilot. I flew 659 patient flights, and I saw people's lives change on a dime. Maybe they went out that morning and everything was okay, and unfortunately they got in a car accident in the afternoon, and there we are landing on a highway taking them to the hospital, hopefully saving their lives. So I saw people lose their lives. I saw us help people save lives, and that's just an amazing thing to go in and watch that happen inside of a hospital, inside of a trauma center. How I operate as a pilot really affect my decision making, really takes the way I learn and how I've done things over time, and helps me transition and translate that to each and every person that I deal with. So when I was an air medical pilot, there was a speaking engagement that I had at Duke University. And as a speaker, you always want to interact with the crowd and you want to talk to them afterwards. And so I had a line of people that wanted to speak to me. And, there I was at Duke University. I'm talking to doctors, I'm talking to trauma nurses, I'm talking to air medical crews, I'm talking to all these people who work in a high-risk, time-critical environment. And I had this line of people come up to me afterwards, and you know what they wanted to talk to me about? They took my speech, they took my talk of what I was talking about, and they tied it to their life. They were asking me questions about parenting. They were asking me questions about their relationships, about their marriage. And it was that moment that I realized that there's something more to what I do than just working in an aviation crew or just working in the hospital environment or a high-risk industry environment. So that was really the birth of Convene Communities. That's when we made the transition, because I knew what I had created, I knew what I had built could be used by anybody and everybody, where anybody could take their story, take their life experience, take their passion, and they could translate that into a collaborative community, a peer-to-peer learning environment where we could all learn from each other.